All right, let's jump into the top 12 running backs from Matthew here. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, Breece Hall. Number 3, Bijan Robinson. If you missed yesterday's show, we had an extended conversation about the debate between these three, especially McCaffrey versus Breece as the number 1 overall pick. Number 4, Jonathan Taylor. 5, Jahmyr Gibbs. 6, Saquon Barkley with his new team, the Philadelphia Eagles. 7, Kyren Williams with the Rams. 8, Derrick Henry now in Baltimore. 9, more of the same for Travis Etienne in Jacksonville. 10, Devon Achane with the Dolphins. Isaiah Pacheco at number 11. 12 is James Cook with the Bills here. Matthew, let's move down the list to start with Kyren Williams at RB7 here. A guy that on any given week gets as much touches as anyone. Now he also gets banged up, but how worried should we be in this factor about a guy like Blake Corum, who, before we go to you, Matthew, Sean McVay has had a lot of lofty praise since they drafted Corum, even comparing him to Kyren Williams after that draft. So take a quick listen, and then we'll jump into Kyren Williams.
One of the things that jumped off is there's a lot of traits that reminded me of Kyren Williams. You know, obviously I love Kyren, and he's been so important in just, you know, the human being, but then also when you just look at the way he works at it, the production and the things that he was able to bring to our offense last year, and even really some of the things that he worked through his rookie year. And I think there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, Kyren will put Blake under his arm and be a great mentor and a kind of a leader, but Ron Gould was really excited about him, Mike LaFleur. I obviously loved his game, and so he's got a bunch of tape to be able to evaluate. He's been a part of an incredibly successful program. He's been the bell cow for them in the midst of the successful runs that they've had the last few years, and so we're really looking forward to getting to work with him.
Matthew, any concern there now with Blake Corum in the mix? Because I think the allure of Kyren Williams is the amount of work he gets.
Yeah, for sure. 21 touches a game, 82% snap rate last season. That led all running backs in the NFL, Connor. So the massive workload is great. And you mentioned it. Like, this is somebody who has missed at least 5 games, the last 2 years. I think, obviously, I don't have a ton of concern because I'm at running back 7. I think the draft strategy with Kyren Williams is pretty clear. Draft Kyren Williams, and then just make sure you draft Blake Corum. If you have to reach for him for a round or 2 early, go ahead and do it. I think that for me, Blake Corum is more insurance than a threat to Kyren Williams, significant playing time. I just don't see I could see them being up more, up late in the second half, and then wanting to go to Corum and maybe not take some touches away. But Kyren Williams has been so good for them. And Sean McVay is a loyal guy. He's a player's coach, right? And so I don't think all of a sudden they're going to go to a committee. When Sean McVay has found somebody productive, again, Kyren the last couple of years, Todd Gurley when he first got to LA, he has been a one running back guy. The problem is that Kyren Williams gets banged up, and you think about where they were last year, where it was like Ronnie Rivers, the ghost of Royce Freeman, like the rookie Zach Evans last year, couldn't even get on the field. And so I think they felt like, hey, we want to have somebody that we feel really good about in the backfield with Kyren, that like if something were to happen to Kyren, that we feel like this is somebody that we can plug into our offense and that can be productive, that can take 20 carries. So for me, I'm less concerned about a workload reduction in Kyren Williams. Maybe he gets a couple of less carries a game, but 21 touches a game. He's still going to get like 17, 18. He's probably going to get a lot of the red zone work. So I am at running back 7. I do think Blake Corum, I don't often recommend drafting insurance running backs, but I do think in this particular case, Blake Corum is very important if you draft Kyren Williams, because if something were to happen to Kyren Williams, I think we feel fairly confident that Blake Corum would just sort of step right in to a very productive fantasy role with the Rams.
Jay, much like Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne is a guy that you love the workhorse nature, right? He was 3rd in total running back touches last year. That was only behind CMC and Rashad White. Now, unlike Kyren Williams, there's not this real shiny, new, well-known running back that scares you. Yes, it's year 2 of Tank Bigsby, but does his workload feel safe to you? Because that's why you're drafting an Etienne.
Yeah, I think it is pretty safe. Like T mentioned, just a huge amount of volume, 4th in running back carries, and also he was able to do what he did last year without being particularly efficient. Jags O-line was not great. I think it's going to be improved this year. I think the whole Jacksonville just offensive ecosystem just has to be better this year because O-line should be better, Lawrence should be healthier. They should be, I think, in scoring position more often. So I think ETN, he shouldn't just be a volume-based guy. Like, this guy is still a very explosive talent, and he's a year further removed from injuries that he dealt with. I think it was hugely encouraging that he was just able to get through the whole season, play 17 games, and have 267 rushing attempts. So I think there is still upside in Travis Etienne. Again, just because, last year is 3.8 yards per carry. I think he's kind of thought of in like the Rashad White type of mold. I think that he can be better than that.
Yeah, let's see how the addition of 2 field stretchers and Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. as well can maybe lighten the boxes that he sees. Matthew, how do you look at Etienne going into this year as you have him in your top 10 running backs?
Yeah, Connor, I think Jay Gunn makes a lot of good points right there.
There it is.
Very good.
I spoke to Doug Peterson, head coach of the Jaguars, at the NFL Combine, an exclusive interview with Doug Peterson. I asked him, but I asked him specifically about this. I'm like, Travis Etienne, right? 325 total touches last year. Only Chris McCaffrey and Rashad White had more in the NFL. Was that a result of, hey, Etienne proved he could handle the workload, or because you felt like he was sort of the only guy you could trust? And he was basically like, kind of both. Like, we don't want him to work that much. We don't want him to work that much, but we do believe, he did prove that he could be a workhorse running back for us. But hopefully, they want Tank Bigsby to come along. They feel like he's in a better spot than he was a year ago. Having said that, if he has a few less touches, I think that might be okay, because again, remember, Etienne is somebody who, like we saw in his rookie year, we saw Clemson, like this is a guy that can make explosive plays. And Jay Gunn mentioned the yards per carry, and that was down, and it felt like he was a little bit more of a grinder, not as efficient last year. So maybe a few less touches means that he's going to break a few more long ones because he's a little bit fresher. Ultimately, he's an unbelievable offensive weapon. Doug Peterson is no dummy, and so he's going to want his best players on the field as much as possible. I'm not worried about Tank Bigsby taking any of the passing game work. Obviously, Etienne getting that part of his game continues to expand, and so Etienne will be on the field with his college teammate, and I think that they will continue to push the ball down the field. So Etienne comes in at running back 9 for me. Does he get 325? No, but it's hard to see him getting less than 275 or 300 touches this year.
Unfortunately, I'm starting to think this is going to stick. This nickname.
Great.
It just feels like it's catching on around the building.
Well, Matthew's not one to beat a joke into the ground, so maybe
you have that going for you. By next week, nobody will remember
exactly.
it, ever talk about it again. Matthew, how about somebody?
Jay, at this point, this is if I'm a Jay Gunn, I think at this point, the ship has already sailed on this year. What you are hoping is that a year from now, that it's just not for the rest of your career. You're hoping it's just this season. Like we've the Michael Thomas stuff has started to die down, and that kind of stuff. Like, I think that what you're hoping for is that it's just got a 1-year shelf life.
Doesn't become a classic like eights.
Yeah, well, last year people were coming up to me on the street asking me about Michael Thomas and Najee Harris, and I kind of long for that as opposed to if anyone comes up to me and calls me Jay Gunn on the street.
Anyway. Here's what I want. Here's what I want, America. Not only I want you to come up to him and call him Jay Gunn, but what you should do, and Jay will appreciate this, trust me, he'll poo-poo it, but trust me on this, what Jay will appreciate is show him your own dance moves. Like when you come up and be like, hey, Jay Gunn.
Oh, wow.
The hop really gets me. That's the one.
Is that Elaine Bennis style moves? Very good.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, that's what that woman that represented your home country,
Ray Gunn,
did. That is exactly what Ray Gunn did, Jay Gunn.
Terrifying nighttime dancing from Matthew Berry in Tuscaloosa. Very grim. Very grim.
Matthew, you hinted at being high on this name yesterday in Isaiah Pacheco. This is a Chiefs offense that on paper there's nothing in this backfield that scares you in terms of his usage, especially without Jerick McKinnon there. Pacheco comes in at RB11. He had a strong finish to the season. Is there a world where he finishes in the top 10, though?
There's absolutely a world. There's also a world where he gets moved up. I will tell you this right now. Isaiah Pacheco on the short list for ride or die. I've got like 12 names
list.
or so right now. 12 somewhat, yeah. I mean, listen, you narrow it down. It's a process. You don't understand this, Jay Gunn. I go through a very, very intense process. Ride or die, there's a lot lot riding on it, as it were. But Isaiah Pacheco's on the list. There are people that are just not on the list that have no chance of consideration. Isaiah Pacheco is one of the people that is on the list. Last season without Jerick McKinnon, he played 7 games. In those games, 19.9 fantasy points per game, over 21 touches per game. He had almost a 12% target share. He's a better pass catcher than he gets credit for. He's obviously a very physical runner. This is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. He's got complete trust of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And oh, by the way, just no competition. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Deneric Prince. There's just not a lot in that backfield. So 3-down work on one of the best offenses in football. And oh, by the way, I think he's pretty good. Just from a pure talent standpoint as well. He's really proved himself in the NFL, obviously proved himself through the playoff run in the Super Bowl last year as well for the Chiefs. So Isaiah Pacheco at 11. And there's certainly a scenario where he's a top 5, top 6 fantasy running back. Easily a scenario there where, if the touchdowns come his way and he adds the passing game work consistently, sky's the limit for Isaiah Pacheco. He's going to have a monster year. That much I will tell you.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.